All right, I want to thank you for joining us today for our webinar to see how easy email encryption can be. My name is Kevin Krushevich. I'm a sales engineer here at SpamSoap. I know many of you, and I really do appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to take a look at what we'll be talking about today. I am joined by Ian Milligan-Pate, our friend over at McAfee, and I'm going to be talking about how this encryption product is powered by McAfee and the relationship with SpamSoap and McAfee. And I'm going to jump right into to that. So if you have any questions, what we have here in the GoToWebinar interface here is a questions panel here where you can go ahead and just enter your questions at any time. We will be answering those questions at the end of the webinar. The content today is only going to go about half an hour, 40 minutes-ish. Certainly have you out of here before the top of the next hour. So go ahead and enter those questions. We will go through those at the end. And in terms of a recording, we will be recording this. We can get that to you if you email us, and we'll provide information about how to get that and how to get any information you want about the product, or actually to try the product here at the end of the webinar as well. So I think that's it as far as business is concerned. We have kind of a mixed audience on the call today, so want to take just a minute to explain, if you're not familiar with SpamSoap, who we are and what we're doing. We were founded in 2002, owned and operated by an Orange County managed service provider here in Orange County, California, and we kind of helped to pioneer this this whole industry, kind of one of the early adopters of that model, and then in 2005 partnered with MX Logic, who's now McAfee, and in 2010 we won the McAfee SaaS Partner of the Year award, which we were excited about. So today as an organization, we are focused on providing simple to deploy and managed cloud security solutions with great MSP support. So many of you on the call today are kind of end users. Maybe you found out about SpamSoap through one of our partners. Maybe you're a reseller of SpamSoap. We're going to be kind of talking to a mixed audience today with maybe some different priorities. So bear with us as we try to kind of relay this broadly. So just real quick here, where we're going today in terms of our agenda. We're going to be talking about the importance of email. Perhaps that's sort of a silly comment, but actually want to re-emphasize that going into the future. We're going to talk about what's at stake related to corporate email. What are the pitfalls? What are the things that we need to be safeguarded against? And then we're going to be presenting the encryption solution, and we feel like it's a really simple, easy-to-use solution. Before we jump into that content, I want to launch a quick poll and ask you, what email encryption solutions are you, or if you're a provider, your customers are currently using? So I'm going to go ahead and launch that poll and ask you to take just a second to select all that apply. If you're using a solution other than what's here, just refrain from answering. Okay, we've got a pretty good representation here. Give it another few seconds. Let me share those results with you. So 83% of us aren't using anything right now. 17% are using PGP and Message Labs respectively, and so the other 33% of the folks that didn't vote presumably are using some other solutions that's not represented here. So appreciate you doing that. We're going to jump in here to our content. First, we want to ask the question, is email still important? Again, maybe maybe that's an obvious answer to you, but there has been speculation with the advent of social media and other forms of communication. How relevant is email, and how relevant will it be in the business world going forward? Is it diminishing? Michael Osterman is a researcher that did a survey last year in December and was referencing how important is email going to be this following year in 2011, and it looks like about 90% of people said that yes, it's still very relevant, and it's still the primary business communication tool. We spend about 146 minutes per day doing something in email. So it's still the primary vehicle that we're using to communicate with one another, and what I found was also interesting is that it's the primary file transport mechanism in most organizations. So not only are we just sending and receiving bits of information, but we're actually moving files around on the internet using email more than any other method, even with FTP, even with Box.net and those types of services. We're still using email, maybe to the chagrin of our administrators who are dealing with the performance implications of that. But that's just the reality at this point. So email's important. Email's ubiquitous. We're using it all the time. What's at stake? Well, one of the things that could be at stake is sensitive content that is available to unauthorized parties. So it could be sensitive documents like purchase orders or contracts, all kinds of intellectual property. Additional info that could be used to mount phishing attacks. If you think about just the content of what's inside of your email database, it's basically your organization's file cabinet. It's a treasure trove of information that could be both benign and could cause some serious data breach implications for your organization. The other piece is really the violation of statutory requirements, whether that's a particular vertical, which we're going to get into, state requirements, municipal requirements. We have requirements that are upon us that we have to deal with. And then, of course, there's adverse legal judgments that really can pertain to either of those categories, whether we've lost somebody's, maybe a customer's personal and private information, which there's many examples of, especially recently. We could have an adverse legal judgment against us. That would be problematic for us. If we are found to not be in compliance with specific requirements that pertain to our vertical, that's a problem for us. So at the end of the day, what we're trying to avoid is really the loss of brand reputation, lost business, lost opportunities, and financial detriment or disaster. And I don't think necessarily that's put too strongly because, like I said, there's a lot of really important, vital information that is locked up in our email systems that we want to make sure is private. So I thought what's going on in the news is really interesting right now this week. So maybe you've heard about this Epsilon breach this week. Maybe you've heard about this Condé Nast breach. I think it was last week, and then a couple weeks ago, this RSA breach. So basically, if you're not familiar with it, Epsilon, which is basically the largest permission-based marketing firm in the world, they send about 40 billion emails a year on behalf of about 2,500 clients. Some of those clients include Capital One, JP Morgan Chase, Barclays Bank, US Bank Corp, and Citigroup, as well as some other e-commerce sites. Maybe you belong to one of those, maybe you're a customer of one of those organizations. They've lost an unknown volume of customer data recently through an attack on their network, and consequently they had to notify their customer base that their records, email addresses, contact information may have been breached. And so that's just happened a couple of days ago. Condé Nast, which of course is a major publisher, paid the wrong company recently more than $8 million after receiving a fraudulent electronic payment authorization via email. So it looked, smelled, tasted like the real thing, but it wasn't the real thing, and they actually paid the wrong vendor, and they didn't find out about it until they had, basically until they were overdue on their invoice, and then they found out about it. So it happened completely silently, and they thought that they were in good standing with that vendor of theirs. The other thing in the news, which was really a huge deal this week, or last week, or a couple weeks ago, was RSA, which is kind of the organization, the company that really started security. Their secure ID two-factor authentication was compromised via a known vulnerability in flash video files, and Adobe has since patched that. They received that via a Excel attachment, I believe, via email. And then, of course, your garden variety SQL injection attacks. Liza Moon is the name of a recent one this week that's getting some media attention. These are just running rampant. So, why do I bring this up? Why are we talking about this? The point here is not necessarily to scare you into thinking that spear phishing or advanced persistent threats is going to be likely for you or for your customers necessarily. We're typically small to medium-sized businesses. Typically, the targets of these attacks are very large organizations. But really, it's that data theft is rampant, and it's really becoming more and more rampant, and that there's a means and a motive to exploit all of us. In the case of Epsilon, yours or my data may have actually been stolen, and I'm not actually sure yet if that was the case. For me, I'm still trying to figure that out because I do business with one of the organizations that contracts to Epsilon. So I need to find out, if that's been the case. So we are vulnerable, and if that's the case, now will there be additional attacks that are mounted on our networks as a result of some of those breaches? The other piece here that's important for UIT providers is going to be the fact that security breaches are really getting a lot of publicity right now. And so there's really a lot of fear surrounding data privacy, data integrity right now. And so as a provider, you need to be educated. You need to be poised to offer solutions, whether those are technology solutions or best practice solutions or just education to your customer, to your end customer. So the other piece here is that unencrypted email is easy to read. We know that email doesn't just travel from point A to point B. It travels across multiple hops throughout the internet. If it's in the clear, if it's unencrypted, it can be read at any time. Any time it could really be intercepted. But if it's encrypted, at least it's not easily read. And you have to have that key to decrypt those messages to be read. Maybe that doesn't happen all the time, but certainly the potential exists. As we're getting more and more mobile, more outside the firewall, more really, the edge of our network is our mobile device, and so the traffic that is containing all that sensitive information is really out there in the cloud on the internet versus just within our network. So important to keep in mind. So we kind of, harkening back to the slide where we talked about what's happening in the news and kind of the state of affairs, one of the things that we want to ask is, who do we trust? From a technology standpoint, where's the right place to put the onus? So what's happening more and more is that hackers are socially engineering us to willingly send sensitive or confidential information to them. So you put all the technology, security, best practices and technologies in place, layers 1 through 7, and great. Let's say you're very hardened in that regard. Layer 8, which is really that kind of user layer, if you can get the right psychology down, if you can just trick that user to really bypass all of that security and just hand over the confidential, the sensitive information that you spent all that money and time and resources in hardening layers 1 through 7, it really is all for naught. So really relying on users' good judgment or common sense really can end in detriment or disaster. Really it just takes a carefully crafted attack or series of attacks with corroborating threat vectors, corroborating pieces of information about a person for them to willingly divulge information that could be personally detrimental or as an organization detrimental to you because it contains not only personally identifiable information but corporate intellectual property. And so I would make the case, just personally, this is just Kevin, I would make the case that not only do we need to educate people to the realities out there, not only do we need to teach them best practices, but we need to put controls in place to safeguard sensitive information from unwitting users. Now, admittedly, I work for a security company that stands to gain from putting said security controls in place. But, pick our competitor, as far as I'm concerned, pick something, pick us, hopefully, but you need to have some controls in place. So as honestly as I can say that, as objectively as I can say that, you need to create a safety net underneath your users. So in the maybe likely event that they divulge sensitive information that would be detrimental to that organization, there's controls in place that would stop that or mitigate that risk. So we have all that to deal with. We also have state breach notification laws that mandate for us in all but 4 cases that if there is such a breach, we can't just sweep it under the rug. And that's the right thing, is to really disclose that. And so we need to do the right thing. But in this case, we really can't get away with not doing the right thing. So, in many cases, and in all the cases recently, these disclosures from RSA and Epsilon and the like have all been disclosures that they've made. And so that's really the way to do that. You don't want your competitor being the first one to break that story. You want to break that story, and you want to control the release of that information. But we need to do that, and we're required to do that by law. And if we fail to do that, there's consequences for that. So in addition to that, we also have encryption requirements, specifically in a couple of states. If you're in Nevada or Massachusetts, not only do you have to disclose data breaches, but you may be required, especially in these states, you are required to encrypt email transmission if it contains things like the Social Security number, bank card number, bank account number, and so forth. So we just have to do it. And you know who you are. So the other piece really is statutory and legal requirements. In this case, you know who you are. So if you're in the financial space, it's GLBA, and you have kind of 2 components of that. If you're in healthcare, it's HIPAA. If you're in education, it's FERPA. Really, if you're doing any kind of payment card processing, it's PCI, and that's fairly ubiquitous. And so, yeah, we have these requirements upon us as well. So what happens if we don't? What happens if we don't play? Well, loss of brand reputation, loss of business. If there were records losses, it's definitely a hit to our brand. We're trying to avoid that at all costs. We're trying to build our brand reputation. We're trying to get consumers and buyers and people to trust us with their business. And the other piece is really lost opportunity. If we aren't complying with these regulations, especially in the case in Nevada and Massachusetts, but it's, even in the verticals, if we are not checking this off our list, we just don't get to play, and so there's money left on the table. I want to launch another quick poll here and get a sense from you what your requirements are or what your customers' requirements are. So we'll go ahead and launch that poll. Have you take a few seconds to select all of the requirements that apply. So we've got another few seconds here, and I'm chuckling because 100% of us so far, almost that now, have general privacy concern. Maybe I should have done the poll at the beginning and then compared that to the same poll after I stopped talking. See how many of I scared you into general privacy concerns. That's not my intent. My intent is to just tell you what is. I don't have to inflate the details. I don't have to make anything up. Unfortunately, that's where we're at. I'm going to close this poll and share it. So, yeah, most of us have privacy concerns. A fair amount of us have state laws and HIPAA requirements, and then SOX and PCI less so. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. So one of the ways that we can help safeguard against the the unintended loss of important information is to employ encryption. We're going to talk about a very, kind of narrow slice of that kind of security stack today. Email encryption is a really important part of that. Obviously, there's other pieces here that we're not talking about today. So, you need to encrypt data at rest, and I'm not, necessarily in a position to consult you on all of your security best practices, but yeah, data at rest should be encrypted. You need to have adequate controls in place. Lots of other things that we're not going to talk about today. One of the things, though, that you need to be thinking about is data in transit. And so if it is traveling over the wire, if it is, kind of sniffed out and intercepted, is it usable? Is it readable? So from a privacy concerns standpoint, that's really important. So one of the ways that we've had in our toolkit to help us mitigate some of these risks is encryption. Just simply, encryption is transformation of plain text from a readable to an unreadable format through ciphering. And so we're converting plain text to ciphertext, and it really secures the integrity of the data. It's unreadable to people without a key, and then we can decrypt it with a key. So that's kind of a very simplistic explanation of what encryption actually is. If you kind of look back and you kind of see where we've been in terms of email encryption solutions, first generation email encryption solutions really required the session key for the data to be re-encrypted. So you're actually encrypting the key itself, and now you're dealing with another key, and so you had to negotiate those keys, and there's some kind of a cumbersome nature to that. Also, typically that's resulting in very large files because those encrypted keys were packaged with that data. So if you're sending emails to and from that are encrypted, they tend to be a lot larger, and then that compounds storage-related problems, performance-related problems that we're trying to avoid. So we solve one problem, we create another problem. That's no good. So at that point, really, systems are not very scalable. They're not easy to manage. If it's a requirement, the cost of meeting that requirement is fairly high from an operational standpoint. So, we're kind of groaning, longing for simplicity, and that has really arrived. And so we want to offer the solution from SpamSoap, which is powered by McAfee. We want to kind of talk about how it addresses some of these needs and how it really kind of meets that desire to really simplify. So before I hand off to Ian, I want to just kind of run through this with you. Really, we can turn it on instantly. You say that you want it, it's up and running because there's no hardware or software to install. There's no gateway that you need to install and configure. It's completely in the cloud. You can enforce email encryption and DLP controls silently. So if data loss prevention and protection is the goal, and you have data that is private that needs to be protected, you can do that via the email channel very easily. You can deploy that to multiple sites very easily, and then it protects mobile devices. So we're going to get into the product, and I'm going to allow Ian. Again, Ian is my friend from McAfee, and this product is powered by McAfee. So I'm going to let Ian kind of get into showing us the tool, how you as a user or as an administrator would get in and configure it, and just how easy it can be. Ian?
Thanks, Kevin, and thanks to everyone for being on the call this morning. We appreciate you setting aside some time out of your day to join us to learn about SpamSoap email encryption powered by McAfee. So what I'm going to do is just take a few minutes here and walk you through an actual overview of the solution itself. So we'll give you kind of a 360-degree view of how the product works from an implementation and administrator management perspective. And then we'll show you both the sender recipient as well as the options, the sender experience as well as the options for the recipient experience. So if you haven't picked up on the theme of today, we're talking about see how easy email encryption can be. And I'll take just a second to kind of expand on what Kevin was saying just a moment ago. When we talk to customers, consistently what we hear is that, yes, we know we should be doing something for email encryption to secure the delivery of our email, but the barriers to entry are too great. When customers look around, they see complex solutions that require high-end appliances or hardware and software deployments that are cumbersome to manage. So typically what we see is a number of organizations who just kind of take the status quo and don't implement anything, even though they know they should. So we're going to show you today Spam Soap and McAfee's answer to that, and we have a solution here that is really easy to use on all fronts and can be up and running very quickly. So on that note, I'll talk about the first two areas that you see boxed here. So we'll take a look at the administrator perspective and show you exactly how the solution works. So I'm going to venture to guess that the majority of the folks on the call today are using or at least are familiar with the Spam Soap email security or mail filtering solution. So the mail encryption service is really just an extension or a bolt-on to that filtering that you may have today. So the way this works architecturally is you are required to use the Spam Soap mail filtering service, which is that best-of-breed mail security, anti-spam, antivirus product delivered as SaaS or as a cloud-based solution. And you would turn on the outbound filtering portion of that. So that means that you set up a smart host connector to route your outbound mail through the Spam Soap service. And then with that, if you have the email encryption module, you'll then have the ability to go into your outbound filtering policy configuration and configure policies to decide what traffic you want to send out encrypted. So there's a couple different ways you can do that. And what you see here on the slide is a screenshot of that outbound mail filtering policy. And we give you a few ways to do this. So one is prepackaged rules. So we have prepackaged rules for things like PCI, for example, that we talked about a little bit. So we have a credit card rule or PCI compliance rule. We have a filter for social security numbers. So you can turn on those type of filters. If for example, you were to turn on the PCI filter, what would happen is as your users sent messages out, the system would scan those messages, and if it saw a message that contained a credit card number string, that pattern match within the email, rather than just passing that message through clear text like it would normally go out, it would actually take that message, set it aside, write it to disk with the email encryption solution, and then as we go down this path, we'll show you what that would look like to the recipient on the other end. So the idea here really is, you're talking about, Kevin mentioned click to deploy. We really talk about this as kind of a 15-minute deployment, especially if you're already using that outbound portion of the Spam Soap service. Really the only step involved in configuring this is just to come in here and set up your policies to decide which rules you want to turn on. And then you can also build your own rules as well. So if you have any custom triggers or keywords, phrases, patterns that you might want to scan for in your email that are unique to your business or phrase or terminology that you deal with, you can come in here and set up those policies just like you see here by entering content rules in the console. So let's talk about the end user experience a little bit, and we'll start with the sender. So one of the key components to this is that it's completely transparent to the sender. So when we talk about the sender, we're talking about your end users, your employees, and really an important piece of implementing a mail encryption solution and is to not have it disrupt the user's day-to-day workflow with their mail. So we see stats that say that users spend anywhere from 2 to 3 hours a day on email during their normal workday. So obviously email, as you all know, is a mission-critical communication tool, the lifeblood of many organizations. It's used for all different functions within a business. So with the mail encryption solution from Spam Soap, your end users continue sending email as they do normally today. And that's true regardless of where they're sending it from. So they could be using their Outlook or whatever their native mail client is. They could be using a web-based access like Outlook Web Access or another type of webmail for their email. Or they could be sending from their mobile device, so from their tablet or smartphone. Your users are simply going to be able to send email as they do today, and then the Spam Soap encryption system is going to scan those messages, as I talked about a moment ago, on the way out for whatever trigger you've sent out. So you can see in this particular screenshot here, the message contains the word financial. That was a trigger that the administrator had defined, and that email would be automatically encrypted based on that. And the other component to that that's a really nice value add for the users is you can give the end user the ability to force something to go out encrypted. So If you want to give users a simple trigger that they can insert anywhere in the subject or body of the email, or even one that they could just append to their email signature. So if they want to make sure something goes out encrypted that end user does, that's the easy way to do that. And we have a default rule that we build into the console that is simply bracket encrypt bracket. So you can tell users just put bracket encrypt bracket anywhere in the message, and that'll ensure that it goes out encrypted. You can also create your own custom triggers if you wanted to have a different one that you give to your users. Next, we're going to talk about the recipient experience. And one of the things that's very unique about this solution, and those of you that are familiar with mail encryption solutions or have looked at some of the different vendors and manufacturers in this space, will know that vendors talk about two different methods or ways that a recipient can get an encrypted email. Vendors talk about push versus pull encryption. So one of the things that really separates this solution is that it actually offers both, and the individual recipient has the choice for how they want to get that encrypted method, get that encrypted email. So in the first method that you see here, which is the encryption pickup portal, this is the pull option. And the pickup portal, which I'll show you momentarily, is a secure web-based portal that that recipient can go to and authenticate to access an encrypted email that's been sent to them. The second option is the push option, which is what we call our secure message reader, which is an application that an end user would download and install locally on their workstation that actually allows them to open an encrypted email natively on their Windows-based machine without having to go out to that web portal. So let's look at the pickup portal first. So what you see here on this slide is actually the email notification that an end user would get when an encrypted message has been sent to them with this service. So they get an email in their inbox that has a link. They click there and open it. When they click that link, they're going to be prompted for a username and password, their username being their primary email address. They would then authenticate with a password, which is a password that they've created at this point. And then when they authenticate in, what they see within this HTTPS site is pretty much a standard webmail view. So from here, you have some basic options. The user, that recipient, can reply back to the original sender. If they wanted to pull down and save a copy of that email, they could do that. The key thing is that that email has been encrypted end-to-end all the way to that recipient, regardless of where they're getting it. So again, when we talk about different access points for getting to your email, on the recipient side, this solution is agnostic. Again, doesn't care if the user is in their Outlook, if they're in a webmail client, or they could be receiving that encrypted email on their mobile device, on their tablet, on their smartphone. And the pickup portal website that we're looking at here is optimized for those mobile devices, so they can get that encrypted email very easily from there. And this is the default method for users to be able to receive encrypted emails. We actually find that the vast majority of users do use the pickup portal, but the secure reader is a nice option as well, so we'll talk about that here just for a second. I mentioned that the secure reader is an application that the user would download and install locally. It'll run on any Windows-based workstation. You can think of this almost as like a PDF reader. So the way that it works is once a user installs this and they receive an encrypted email, that encrypted email is going to come through to their inbox as a message with an attachment, with a proprietary encrypted file attachment type. And they're going to open that attachment. That's going to automatically launch the secure reader application. They authenticate, and then they're able to view that encrypted email right there on their workstation without going out to the web portal. And again, the recipient has complete choice. So it is totally up to the individual user. You don't have to make a choice at the organizational level. Each user can choose. They have the ability to change their mind, toggle back and forth, really flexible in that regard. And I think this slide is useful because, I think one of the things that organizations struggle with as they look at mail encryption solutions, as with anything that kind of touches on regulatory compliance, is you have a lot of different stakeholders involved in the decision-making process. And when we look at this solution, we really kind of boil that down to three areas. So we have the IT benefits, which we really talked about this at the administrator level, is your ease of management, ease of deployment, no hardware or software required to be installed or maintained anywhere within the corporate environment. So very simple plug-and-play type SaaS technology. We talk about the benefits of the end user. That's what we saw at both the sender and recipient level, making sure that there's no disruption to the way that those users interact with their email today, that everything is transparent there, that you're not generating added workflow or load that's going to come back on your IT help desk from that. And then lastly are the business benefits, and this is really what Kevin talked about in the top half of the session. When you look at the different areas of regulatory compliance, the general privacy concerns, the ability to secure your intellectual property and make sure that doesn't get into the wrong hands, those are the benefits at the business level. So I'm going to turn it back over to Kevin at this point. Appreciate everyone's time, and I'll be online at the end of the session taking questions with Kevin.
Great, thanks, Ian. So just to kind of recap here, some of the stuff that we've gone over. One, we want to really safeguard our brand reputation, right? That's paramount. So we need controls in place to be able to do that on, kind of a number of levels. Email certainly being one of them. We have specific secure email requirements related to state and municipality requirements, related to vertical requirements. The solution from SpamSoap is really easy to use. There's no hardware or software, so it's easy to deploy. One of the things that we can do to help from a sender perspective is to even just build the ability to manually encrypt a message into an email signature, and we show you how to do that very easily, so you don't have to worry about typing the right triggers. So, we kind of thought through the workflow as a user and really made it really easy. So I do want to talk a little bit about pricing. I can see one of the questions that's come up is about pricing as well and kind of next steps. We're going to jump just very shortly here into some Q&A. So if you have questions, now would be the time to go ahead and use the GoToWebinar questions window and just go ahead and type those in, and we'll just start to knock those out. So pricing, some of you are going to like this, some of you are not going to like this. I'm not going to give you a price, exact price quote per user right now. I want you to reach out to us. We have a mixed audience, and so we've got resellers on the line that build their services around our services that we're offering, and so the price points are going to vary. But I will tell you the pricing is per user per month with no upfront costs. The inbound and outbound filtering service is required. So if you're using our inbound service and you don't yet have our outbound, you need to use the outbound service, and we can turn that on very easily for you. But please do reach out to us to get a formal quote. Not to sidestep that question, but just want to kind of respect all the parties on the line today. So how can you get a quote? How can you get a trial? If you're a partner or a direct customer, you can just go to spamsoap.com/30-day trial and you can fill out that form. If you're a reseller, you can send your request to reseller@spamsoap.com. If you need more information about the product page on our website is a good place to go. You can also download the PDF spec sheet there. You can also just email us to info@spamsoap.com or just call in and hit option 3 and you can talk to a real live person. How about that? And then if you have or you want more information about our channel programs, maybe you're not yet a partner or reseller, just go ahead and go to spamsoap.com/resellers. You could fill out a info request form there and reach out to us those ways as well. So that would be how to reach out to us. So I want to thank you for joining us today to see how easy email encryption can be. We're going to sign off here and see you next time.